we get started on this one, I'd like to thank everybody. I'm sitting at 700 subscribers, and that's just amazing. I didn't think I'd make it this far, this quickly. It's only been 2 months, and that's just incredible to me. And a special thank you to Bailey J for sharing that last video where I actually drew her as Harley Quinn. If you haven't seen that, it's going to be at the end of this video, and there'll also be a link in the description to her channel if you've never heard of her before. And again, thank you, Bailey. That was incredible. Now today we're actually going to be drawing the human eye. This is going to be a tutorial video where I'm teaching you step by step on how I learned how to draw the human eye. Now there are other methods out there, and I encourage you that if this method don't work for you, to go out there and explore the different ways that you can do it yourself. This is my first tutorial ever, so I really hope you all enjoy it, and I hope it helps you out. I'll be doing commentary throughout the video, explaining what I'm doing, as well as making pauses at certain moments throughout the video to where y'all could catch up and keep pace. With all that said, we're going to get started in 5, 4, When starting out with drawing the human eye, when I first began drawing it, I'd always start out with an oval shape. Then I'd go over to the side and create a smaller oval shape. And then on the other side, I would put a triangle. And using those shapes, you would get the basic outline of the eye. Now, following the shapes, you want to connect them all together, creating the basic curves of the eye. Notice whenever I go over the triangle, I do not go all the way to the tip. I cut off the tip of the triangle to try to create a more natural look for the eye. I use the end of the oval from the inside of the eye to figure out where I actually want the tear duct to begin within the inside. Then I go inside the oval and create the basic shape of the tear duct. At this point, now we got a pretty good idea of where the shape of the eye is going. Now it's time to draw the outline of the iris. As you'll notice throughout the piece, I'll be cleaning it up, erasing certain parts we don't need anymore, and I implore you to do the same, otherwise the end result could look messy and rushed. After a little bit of cleaning up, I continue from the tear duct to finish up the lower part of the eye. A little trick I learned down the line is that I like to put a cross in there to make it to where I can draw the pupil out piece by piece, so it will have a great structure and almost perfect circle. I like to fill in each section of the pupil individually, except for the one that I'm planning on reflecting light off of the eye. The reason for this is that I want to do as little erasing in the pupil as possible, because if there's any smearing, it could possibly ruin the eye. I'm going to start darkening up the iris, making little jagged marks to try to make it look as close to the real thing as possible. If you're drawing someone, it could vary from person to person on how the iris would look. Some people have heavier, darker irises, and some of them look almost non-existent. I use very light strokes throughout the eye to... Now that we've got a soft outline, it's time to harden up some of these lines to give the eye a bit more depth. Right here, I'm actually darkening up the pupil, but I insist that you don't do this until you're absolutely sure where you're going to have the light reflecting off of the eye. I'm going to darken up the outer ring of the iris. In some cases, it will be lighter. In some cases, it'll be darker. It will depend on person to person, but in this case, we are just drawing an eye from start to finish with no reference. When darkening in the inner part of the iris, it's best to be as careful as possible about working around your reflected part of the eye. At this point, I actually added a few veins over to the side of the eye just to give them a bit more character. I thought it was a nice touch. Now that we have the inner part of our eye done, it's time to move on to the outside of the eye. When working on the lower fold of the eye, if you're drawing with no reference, it's best to try to keep it closer to the eye than further away, and this goes the same for the eyelid. When it comes to eyelashes, it's best to have various lengths when working on them, otherwise it simply just doesn't look realistic. Now this part is very, very risky. I am dabbing my eraser on the inside of the iris to kind of give it a foggy look. Then I'm going to go back in and darken the certain sections that need to be darkened. I also felt that I made the outer ring of the iris a bit too thick, so I wanted to thin that out a little bit. Now that we're at this point, I do want to point out, if there are certain things about your eye that you are working on right now that you feel like needs to be changed, by all means do it. It's your eye. You need to be satisfied with it. I did put a little bit of shading over the top of the eye to make it look like it's a bit more sunken in. And once again, that is not required. I just like the way it looks. Now whenever you're sketching the lower eyelashes, you got to make them much shorter and look almost completely different, because the visuals on the top eyelashes to the bottom eyelashes are very different. Because you're seeing the lower eyelashes from straight forward. The upper eyelashes are sticking straight up whenever people's eyes are open. At this point, it is time to do a bit of touch-up work and a bit of shading. I start off with a little bit of flattening on the one side of the eye, while cleaning up just a little bit more. I'm going to do a bit of shading on the upper and lower part of the outer eye to kind of give it more of that sunken look that I mentioned earlier when I was shading the upper part of the inner eye. I'm going to begin my eyebrow. Now when it comes to the eyebrow, this is fair game. Whatever you want the eyebrow to look like, most of the time it'll work, but I recommend not trying to sketch every individual hair. It looks like that's what I'm doing right now, but I'm actually mapping out where I want my shading to be. You actually want to do clumps of shading rather than sketching every individual hair. At this point, it's best to darken up your lines and do as much cleanup as possible to try to get the most cleanest, slick look to your eye. As we're finishing up the eyebrow and finishing up this piece overall, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for watching this video. Y'all have been great. I hope this helped you out a lot. If there was any suggestions or any criticisms or anything you'd like to say about the video, please comment below. If you enjoyed it, like the video. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe. Also, I wanted to mention the reason I used a big pencil in this particular one instead of using multiple shaded pencils like you could buy a set at Hobby Lobby or online is because I wanted to use materials that were right on hand that anybody in my audience could actually use, because having those sets would be a bit more rare for the younger audience that is trying to learn how to create the human eye. Like I said before, if y'all have any suggestions on what I could have done better in this video, I'd love to hear them, because I will be creating more tutorial videos. I know I'm coming out with one of drawing the human nose and another one of drawing the human mouth, and then finally drawing the human face, where we will be applying everything we've learned from the past 3 videos to create the human face. Here we are, we sketched the human eye. Alright, be sure to comment below and let me know if my method helped you. I'd really love to know, and if you haven't yet, be sure to like this video, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet for future tutorial videos and art challenges. But until next time, this has been As Seen by Austin. Alright, so that was my first tutorial. If y'all enjoyed this and you'd like to get updates of when my next videos will be sure to follow me at any of these social medias here. And if you'd like to see other videos, here's a couple that I think you all would love.